Buddhism Overview. This presentation gives information to help us get started with our study of Buddhism. It tells us how many Buddhists there are in the world, where they live, what practices they have in common, and how their practices differ. We will start with some demographic information. Buddhists comprise 7% of the global population. They are the fifth largest religious group after Christianity, Islam, religiously unaffiliated people, and Hinduism. 94% of the world's Buddhists live in these 10 countries. By some measures, 50% of the world's Buddhists live in China. There are also significant Buddhist populations in the East Asian countries of Japan and South Korea. Though Buddhism started in India, less than 2% of India's population today identifies as Buddhist. In South Asia, Sri Lanka and Bhutan have Buddhist majorities, and in Southeast Asia, we find large Buddhist communities in Thailand, Burma, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Laos. Buddhists represent a majority of the population in these 7 countries. In Cambodia, Thailand, and Burma, they make up more than 80% of the population. Most Buddhists, however, are part of a religious minority in their home country. This presentation draws its demographic information from the Pew Research Center's report on the global religious landscape as of 2010. The study estimates that 50% of the world's Buddhists live in China. But we should look at this information more closely. The Pew Center compiles information from research conducted by Chinese universities. Though in China, survey research about religious identity might not tell us the whole story. When surveys ask Chinese people whether they are part of an organized religion, only 10% of the people say yes, and 4% say they are Buddhist. But in China, the phrase organized religion tends to be used in reference to institutionalized religious practice, and the practice of Christians and Muslims in particular. The official atheism of the Chinese Communist Party could also have a chilling effect when people complete surveys about religion, because party rhetoric associates organized religion with political corruption and partisan disloyalty. Also, in China, as in most of East Asia, popular religion, where lay people conduct devotional practice on their own, tends to have more prominence than organized religion. When surveys ask people about their religious customs, more people describe Buddhist practices. 33% say they believe in Buddha or a bodhisattva, and 26% say they burn incense and worship. It's also hard to draw a sharp boundary around the Buddhist population in China because some people participate in more than one religious tradition at the same time. Buddhist teaching does not require that a person give up another religion. In addition, many Buddhists in East Asia express devotion to the Bodhisattva of compassion, often known by the Sanskrit name of Avalokitesvara. Chinese folk religion has also adopted this practice in a parallel devotion to the goddess of mercy, Guan Yin. When surveys ask people to say whether they practice Buddhist customs or customs of Chinese folk religion, a smaller number of people describe their religious practice as Buddhist. While the number of Buddhists has increased in the past 80 years, Buddhism has not grown as quickly as the overall population. In the 20th century, Buddhism saw declines under the communist governments of China and North Korea. Marxist rhetoric describes religion as an opiate that makes people indifferent to historical injustices. In the Cultural Revolution, many Chinese communist partisans see Buddhism as part of the Four Olds, the ideas, cultures, customs, and habits to be purged from society. In South Korea, the growth of Christianity also contributes to Buddhism's decline. During the first quarter of the 21st century, Buddhists' relatively lower birth rates and the subsequent aging of the Buddhist population have set a course for slower population growth. Buddhism's growth in North America and Europe has been caused chiefly by migration. We do see religious conversion to Buddhism, but not at a rate sufficient to offset Buddhism's declining share of the global population. To identify the practices Buddhists hold in common, we can use Stephen Prothero's technique of summarizing a religion's central narrative. Prothero uses 4 questions: what the religion sees as humanity's problem, what solution the religion offers, how people can attain that solution, and who shows people the way to this solution. With Buddhism, however, it makes more sense to start with a 3rd question: who shows people the way? Buddhism begins when Siddhartha Gautama becomes the awakened one, the Buddha. Some days after he found a path to enlightenment, the Buddha decides he wants to help others learn what he has learned, and he gives his first sermon at a deer park in Sarnath. In this sermon, the Buddha teaches the 4 Noble Truths. They address Prothero's other 3 questions. We will learn more about the life of the Buddha and the 4 Noble Truths later in this unit. At this point, we'll walk through the rest of Prothero's questions. Buddhism sees suffering as humanity's primary problem. The Buddha also sees that ignorant cravings or misguided desires cause human suffering. The solution Buddhism proposes, and the central aim of Buddhist practice, is the elimination of suffering. The word Buddhists use for the elimination of suffering is nirvana, which means to blow out, like extinguishing the flame of a candle. People pursue nirvana by adopting the middle path. This means living a life that avoids extremes of self-indulgence and self-denial. More specifically, Buddhist teaching elaborates in the Noble Eightfold Path the personal conduct, mindset, and wisdom that guide a person in a balanced life that extinguishes ignorant craving and allows a person to escape from suffering. Buddhism has 3 main branches and many schools of practice. The oldest of Buddhism's branches is called Theravada, the way of the elders. Buddhist monasteries have a special place in Theravada practice and in its cultural reproduction. Theravada is most often found in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. Mahayana Buddhism begins in the 1st century of the Common Era. Mahayana focuses on ritual devotion to a Buddha or to a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a being who has attained enlightenment and dwells in heaven, but who continues to work on earth to help others achieve enlightenment. As Mahayana Buddhism spreads, its practitioners adapt their practices to fit their cultural context. These adaptations give rise to different schools of Buddhist practice, each with its own focus and culture. Mahayana Buddhism has spread throughout most of East Asia, and we find tremendous diversity in Mahayana practice. Vajrayana Buddhism, which is sometimes called Tibetan Buddhism, emerges from Mahayana. It draws from Buddhist monastic practice and also integrates aspects of the Bon religion, which had been practiced in Tibet before Buddhism was brought to the region in the 7th century. Some Vajrayana monks also use practices adapted from Indian Tantra. For lay people, Vajrayana practice focuses on giving alms to monks and ritual devotion to Chenrezig, the Tibetan name for Avalokitesvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and to his consort Tara, a popular female bodhisattva. Vajrayana is prevalent in Tibet, Bhutan, and Mongolia. In summary, Buddhism is the 5th largest religious group in the world. 7% of the people in the world are Buddhist, and about 96% of Buddhists live in Asia. About half of the world's Buddhists live in China, where Buddhism is most often practiced as a popular religion, when religious practice is directed by regular rank-and-file members. Buddhism is growing more slowly than the global population. Most Buddhists honor the Buddha. His teachings shape the religion's central narrative. Humanity's greatest problem is suffering, And the aim of Buddhist practice is to eliminate suffering by living according to the middle path. Buddhism has three branches of practice: Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana.